Alright, welcome back everyone to another post-production tutorial. Today we've received a question from Mark Osborne. Mark wants to know, hi Phil, is there any chance that you could do a tutorial on color correction in Photoshop if you haven't done one already? Well no, I haven't done one, so thanks so much for the question, Mark. Before we dive too deeply into this, I want to quickly go over the term color correction. I personally believe this gets thrown around a lot, this term, and it can be misleading because a lot of people seem to think whether you're doing video editing or anything to do with images, if you bring, your content into an application and you adjust the saturation or you adjust the blacks, and that's initially color correcting it. Not really. To do with video is completely different. A lot of the times the terms referred as color grading, and most people do that when it's going to TV. There's a lot of broadcast legalizations that you have to work with. I was previously working as a commercial editor for Mobile Active. I was doing that for about 3 years, and I learned that TV are very strict when it comes to color. Images that you post up to Facebook has no limitations at all. You can put whatever image you up, whatever image you want up there. It's not going to say, oh, there's too much color in this image. Broadcast is completely different, so when you're doing color grading, that's a term for video, then yeah, you've got a lot of legalizations that you have to abide by. Otherwise, dubstep, which is the production air, they won't allow it to go to TV, because basically to do with a lot of different TVs are going to see it in completely different ways. So anyway, I just think that term color correction gets thrown around a lot, and it's a little bit misleading for some. So anyway, look, I won't rant too much about that. What I guess Mark is saying is, how do I get the best color representation and the best sort of feeling to my image? So look, what I've got in front of me is a photograph of Adam Bolton that I took a couple of weeks ago. We were just mucking around. He was helping me out on a tutorial that we were doing on location. But this is a raw image. Before I start editing, I think that if you're going to bring anything into Photoshop or Lightroom or Aperture and you're going to start doing post work on it, then shoot in RAW. If you're doing images, shoot in RAW, because you're going to get the best control over it. So if you can edit JPEGs, but you're limited to what you can do with a RAW file. So I mean, if you guys aren't too sure on RAW versus JPEG, check it out online. I'll do a complete video on that sometime soon. But yeah, I'd recommend shooting in RAW because you're going to get the best control over it. I won't go over every single technique that I usually would. For this image, it's not too bad as you see it. Every photograph is going to have a different style that you're going to want to do, but for this image straight away there's a couple of things that I would do. I usually start by cropping just a little bit. I don't like leaving too much headroom for people. I like keeping it a little bit tight. You can see with my tic-tac-toe grid here, I've specifically shot this abided by the rule of thirds. So that's really off-centering your image to the left or the right, because a lot of people these days, they shoot with the subject right in the middle, and it's not incorrect, but you can do it better. So I'll crop this down a little bit. First thing that I'll do this in Lightroom. Mark's asked for me to do it in Photoshop, but I'll do a couple of adjustments here, show you how I can do this really basic here, and then I'll jump over into Photoshop and I'll show you how it can be done there. So the first thing that I'll do is I pump up the blacks just a little bit. Now that really gives it it really brings out a lot of feeling to the image. The blacks, because we're shooting digital SLRs, some of the images can look flat, so doing something as simple as pulling the blacks up is a really big thing. For me, I think the exposure needs to come up a little bit. Being this is a RAW file, I've got about 3 stops of exposure I can play with, which is awesome. I was shooting this on a Nikon D3S. I shot this with a SB900 shooting through an umbrella off to the left. ISO 200, 50mm with a 24-70 2.8 at f9, 1/200th of a second. Now I was focused right here on Adam's eye. Because I was shooting at f9, the background's not blown out too much, but because there is still a little bit of a separation between him and the background, so that's good to start working with. Anyway, a lot of people would tend to bring the saturation up. For this image, you know what? You don't always have to bring the saturation up. You can pull it down. But what I will do is, in Photoshop, I'll do a little technique that I'll show you. That's cool. Keeping the background a little bit more colorful than your subject, or vice versa. Anyway, look, tone curving down here. For this image, there's not too much that I need to adjust here. this is your temperature up here. This really refers to your white balance. Now, being this was shot in RAW, I've got complete control over this. Shooting a JPEG bakes the image, bakes the temperature in. You can't adjust it. These numbers here, basically, the higher the number, the warmer, the more of an orange tint to your image. The lower the number, the cooler tint there's going to be to that. So a lot of the times you can really just play with this and get a feeling that you like. You see, the lower I go, you know, or like ridiculous like that, that's too far. That's at 2000 Kelvin. So I would never go that far. But for this image, you know, probably just a little bit warmer. So, you know, right about, you know, 5500. So that's daylight balance. So that's probably where I'd be keeping it. There's probably a little bit of recovery that needs to be done on his face. So if I pull that down just a little bit, you can see it's adjusted the entire image because these are global changes. But probably the blacks can go up a little bit more, just like that. I'll move down into tone curve. Now this is, before I move into, I'll move into Photoshop next, but this is essentially curves. In Photoshop or Lightroom, this can be all you need to make your corrections. Now, this is really powerful. What you want to try and do is get this curve into sort of an S formation. I'm not going to do it too much in here because I've already done some adjustments above. Usually you would start with this, you know, from scratch. But straight away, see, for me, that's much too. There's too much contrast in that. The blacks are just too overpowering. So yeah, that's not too bad. That's probably what I'd be going for. This was shot. Usually, a lot of my images, I'll go right into it to a really contrasted area and see if there needs to be any noise reduction done. Being that this image was shot at ISO 200, it doesn't need anything at all. If you're shooting late at night and you have to increase your ISO, as soon as you're getting around on most cameras 3200 or 6400, you definitely need to do some reduction. The D3S, the camera that I use, handles noise really well, so that's really one of the main reasons I purchased it. But yeah, so I don't really need to do any reduction on this. Again, this is something that I'll usually do. Lightroom has lens corrections. Now, this will preset pick up the lens that I was using, and all that does is it just removes a tiny bit of barrel distortion. There's not too much in it, but when you're shooting architectural stuff, you need to start working on the lines. Now, for instance, for me, this pole in the background is a little bit off, so what I would probably do is I would just rotate this a tad to straighten up that pole a little bit. I'm a big fan of having things straight in the background when it comes to poles and lines. So yeah, that looks better. It's not a massive change, but it does look better for me. Now, all over, this image is pretty much done. If you're wanting to do heavy editing, then that's when you move into Photoshop. So before I do that, I'll show you a couple of black and white examples as well. As soon as I go to black and white, the black and white channel, that already looks pretty much done. There's not too much I need to do. The only thing I would be doing is pulling the exposure down a little bit, adding a little bit of fill light, and pulling up the blacks just a bit, probably a little bit more exposure. Yeah, just like that. A little bit more blacks as well. Again, tone curves is really good to do in the black and white channel. You have a lot of control. Again, try and make an S formation with this line. If you do an opposite S, like a backwards S, you'll notice that there's a lot of detail gets pulled and stripped from the image. So try to be careful with that. But again, just play with it and you'll pick it up along the way. Anyway, I'll reset this. So that's straight away, that's a scratch. And you can see I'll undo that. That's what it was in black and white, and that's what it's like in color. So there's probably too much black there. I'll pull that down a little bit. But yeah, so just subtle adjustments like that. This is not so much color correcting, this is more color enhancement, because that's what we're really trying to get. We're trying to get this image to pop out more than when it was shot. Alright, look, so I'll reset this again. You can see straight away it goes nice and flat. But we'll jump into Photoshop and I'll show you a couple of different techniques in here. I'll just do color in Photoshop. I won't do black and white, because if you are to do anything in black and white, I recommend checking out NIK Software. They do some really awesome black and white enhancements. Some of the richest and some of the best colors that I've seen. So I had one open before I closed that. Yeah, so check out NIK Software if you're doing anything for black and white. I'll just move my layers panel over here. First rule, always duplicate the background. This is a big thing that a lot of people don't do. They seem to be working just on the background layer. If you make any mistakes, a lot of the time you should be working with duplicates and layer masks anyway, because if you make a mistake on the background, you have to go into your history channel and you have to pull it all the way back. So I'll pull my history channel over to here. Sorry, I'm doing this on one screen, so it's a little bit tight. Alright, anyway, we'll start again with this image. Now firstly, I'll be going, after I've duplicated the background, I'll go to Image, Adjustments, and Curves. Where's Curves? Just there. I usually use keyboard shortcuts. There's a couple of different channels you can be working in here. Sometimes it's best to work in RGB, but you know, it depends what you're after. So they have a function called Auto. For this image, it hasn't really done too much. You can see the preview after. It's made it, you can barely see it. It's only a very subtle change, which isn't always a bad thing. But look, well, I'll cancel that. Curves again. Look, so again, we want to try and get this S formation going on. So you can see really, really subtle movements make a really kind of a drastic change to the image. So you can see the preview before and after. Yeah, that's just popping it a little bit more out. So we can go down even darker. So this is a good way to get a punchy, contrasty feel to your image. Again, there's 100 different ways to do this, guys, but this is just my preferred way. I think you've got a lot more control. A lot of people tend to try and follow this histogram. They think, oh, okay, I've got to try and get the line to follow the histogram. That's not what you do at all. I'll show you what happens if you try and do that. If you pull that over to, it'll only let you go so far, but that's giving you some sort of a basic, it's like the worst paint effect you could ever imagine. I've seen this before, and it's just, it was cool 10 years ago, but it's just horrible these days. If I see that, I will yell at you. Anyway, look, we can reset that back over. Go again, make a nice S formation, turn the preview on. And there you go. So this is probably what I'd be doing for this image here, just in terms of color and blacks. Now, what I want to do is I want to get Adam to stand out a little bit more. Now, there's a couple of ways I can do this. Some people do it with, they'll make a duplicate layer and they'll blur out the background just a little bit, but I don't like any of the blurring filters in Photoshop. You need to, if you're doing anything with blurring, you'd have to check out On1 Software. They do a program called Focal Point. That's realistic depth of field. They've got algorithms that are built from real lenses, so that's the best sort of blurring I've seen so far. But what I want to do is I want to get him to stand out a bit more. So what I'm going to do is a really, really simple process, is to make the background just a little bit darker. So I can do that by pulling down the saturation, or I can take down the exposure. For this instance, I'll take down the saturation. So what I'll do is I'll make a layer mask. Actually, you know what? I won't work with a layer mask at the moment. You should always be doing this, but just for the simplicity of this tutorial, I'll just do it on a background layer. All I need to do, adjustments, I'll go to black and white. And there you go. Right here, you can adjust all your color. So I've got a lot of green in this image. So when I start playing with the green, you'll notice the grass is really the area that's being affected. So I want the grass to be down a little bit, not too much. Again, you've always got the auto, but I wouldn't recommend hitting auto all the time, because it's like shooting in auto on your camera. You want to make the decisions. So there we go. We've got a layer up the top. Again, should always be working in a layer mask, but I'm just gonna cheat through this quickly and do it. But all I can do is hit the eraser tool and get a soft brush and start putting a bit of color back into Adam. Now, usually you're gonna want to move in nice and close to do this. Again, I stress you should be doing this on a layer mask. That's the first thing that you should always be doing, but as I said, this is just the simple side of the tutorial that I'll just do it really, really rough and really quickly, just so you can get the idea. a lot of you guys know what layer masks are anyway. There was a term that I was told in a TAFE course a couple of years ago, that layer mask is basically like Zorro's mask. The information, when he puts the mask on, all the information, his face, his eyes, everything's still there, but it's just hidden. That's exactly what a layer mask is doing. Some people seem to be confused about what it actually does, but yeah, think of Zorro's mask. All you're doing is hiding the information, and if you want to get back to it later on, then you can. So that's a good way to try and remember it. Again, really rough job, guys. Usually you'd be in a lot more detail. I'm only at 100% here. You know, you really should be at a couple of 100%, but it's just an example. And I think everybody knows Adam Bolton. He has some of the most ridiculous posts on Facebook, and I've never seen single images get so many likes or comments or attention. It's just ridiculous. The kid should be working at Facebook for a freaking job, seeing how many likes he can get in a day. But nah, he's an alright dude. He's helped me out with a couple of photographs, and all the girls seem to like it, so it benefits me, I guess. But he's a smart ass, I'll tell you that. Yeah, so very quick, very rough. Usually you'd have a lot more detail in it with doing that. Anyway, look, that's a quick example. What you can do as well is you can drop down the opacity of the background, so it's bleeding a little bit more color through. So if you take it all the way back down, you can see that's the grass, how green it originally was. I don't initially want that, but I don't want to adjust Adam, so I want to take down the color of that. That really makes him stand out from the background. So 77%, that's pretty much fine for me. And anyway, as I said, I'll put a link in the description for NIK Software. They do some of the best black and white presets and adjustments. It's a really, really rich, really excellent color for black and white. So yeah. Alright guys, I hope this helped. Mark, thanks again for the question. I hope this helped. If you got any more, shoot them through, and I'll do my best to help you out. Alright, thanks for that guys. Bye.